Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Liza Noonan, CEO of Cicada Innovations, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the 2026 edition of Tech23. In the spirit of reconciliation, Cicada acknowledges the traditional custodians of the many countries throughout Australia you're joining today's webinar from, and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to Australia's first scientists and engineers, elders past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations peoples joining us today. For those new to the Cicada community, we are the home of Australian deep tech, connecting with hundreds of startups and scale-ups, solving complex global challenges with the science and technology underpinning critical sovereign capability. Every year, Cicada and Tech23 surfaces the founders shaping Australia's future. In fact, the first time I heard the term deep tech was at Tech23 in 2013. It was where I met a different type of founder, one who was diving headfirst into incredibly complex problem spaces because solving those problems mattered. Tech23 is also where I connected with a community of dedicated people committed to supporting this special kind of founder. You could say Tech23 was the moment I was instantly hooked on deep tech, and it's literally still one of my favorite days of the year. Cicada and Tech23 exist to find and elevate Australia's most ambitious science and engineering-led companies, the ones that are building serious technology with long-term intent, the ones that are creating and reshaping entire industries, not just products. In September 2026, Tech23 returns to Sydney, and we're already on the road to the biggest week ever for Aussie deep tech. The list of alumni who have stood on that Tech23 stage over the past 15 years is immense. Algini, Samsara Eco, Morse Micro, Prospection, Ulu, Propeller, Rux Energy, Regro, Scienta, Tessara Therapeutics, and I could go on and on. And of course, the three companies you are going to meet today and their incredible founders. I'm now going to hand you over to Sian Priest from Cicada Innovations to introduce you to these founders and host our conversation as we set out on the road to Tech23 2026.
Thank you, Liza, and great to be here with everybody today. I get to do one of my favorite things, which is talk to founders who are, well, they're each building deep tech companies in different domains, but they're tackling genuinely big global problems. They're interesting human beings, and I think they're building the world-changing businesses that Australia and the whole globe needs. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. Want you to think of this as a bit of a deep tech chat show. They're going to be joining me on my proverbial chat show stage. What we're going to do is going to bring in each founder one by one. I'm going to have a bit of a catch up with them. You'll get to learn what they do, why we think they're incredible alumni of Tech23, what's changed since Tech23, what's the momentum around the business, and then we're going to bring them all back together for a bit of a rapid fire questions and answers, truth bombs as a deep tech founder. If you do have a question, I'd love for you to pop it into the Q&A. I'll try and get to as many as I can. And also, I can see lots of you online. Do say something in the chat. Tell us who you are, where you're from. We'd love to hear from you. But let's get into it and meet our first founder. Right now, I think the whole world is talking about oil. And did you know that the mining industry is one of the biggest users of diesel in the entire world? In fact, a fun fact I learned from this founder. Australia imports the vast majority of its refined fuels, and the national diesel reserve we have only lasts about a couple of weeks. You can imagine the pressure that we're under right now. This is where EPCA comes in. They are completely changing the way mining thinks about how it powers its trucks. And to tell us loads more about it, live and direct from WA, we have the founder and CEO, Clayton Franklin. Hey, Clayton.
Hi, Sian. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining me on the Deep Tech Sofa. So, for those who are maybe not familiar with what EPCA does, tell us what you do, the problem you're solving, and why it's so important for the mining industry.
Sure. We retrofit diesel mining equipment into full battery electric. So we convert mining trucks and loaders. We're yet to do a dozer and a grader, but the main thrust for us is a truck. We've completed a 100-ton truck, which is a Caterpillar 777. Of course, 100-ton is the payload. The actual truck weighs 160 ton, but it carries 100-ton. And their next size, or the maximum size we're looking at, is a 240-ton. But these machines go all the way up to 400-ton. So they're massive machines, mobile machines, guzzling a hell of a lot of fuel all the time. Put it in perspective, the 100-ton, about $750,000 worth of fuel every year, which has probably gone up now, hasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
So they're huge diesel, huge carbon emitters.
So what I think is really interesting about your approach is this idea of retrofit. So tell me why retrofit? Why is that the right solution right now, rather than just mining companies going out and buying a brand new electric truck? That reality, we're a bit away from that right now. Talk to me a bit about why retrofit matters.
Retrofit is quicker to market. So right now in the marketplace, you do have the big OEMs, the Caterpillars and the Komatsus. They dominate Western Australia, but they are yet to build a new electric machine. Everyone still wants the Caterpillar and the Komatsu. So our company removes the diesel components and then puts in its own, it's an EPCA EV powertrain. So we put in our own powertrain. So we bring it to market quicker.
Yeah.
We're recycling the older machines, which there's nothing wrong with them anyway. It's not like your car or your scooter. These are big machines that you can refurbish every single component. You can buy every single component. People trade in the second-hand market for these machines. We're fixing them up all the time. So it's not something that's difficult to do. And then we can do it quicker to the market. It's cheaper. And then you get all the benefits of electric. Like a Tesla, lower maintenance, lower operating costs, just on a bigger scale. Yes.
And just to give people a sense of how quickly or how long it can take you to retrofit a truck, is it still around that sort of 6 to 8 week turnaround? Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. So if we've got all the components in the workshop, then that's what we do it in. We're also doing it in India as well at the moment. So we're trying to see if we can instruct others based on our instructions and our 3D models and how we put it together, not only in our workshop, but, all the way overseas in India, see if they can do it in that time frame as well. So, we're confident of 7 weeks. It's not a huge job.
And tell me, Clayton, just give the audience a little bit of sense of your background. What did you do before EPCA? I mean, I know you tinkered around with quad bikes and trucks on the farm, but how have you ended up in this? How have you ended up in this problem space? What's your background?
Yeah, I guess you've got to think how far do you want to go back. But I guess if I think of myself as a young man, well, even my dad's an engineer as well, and a farmer and a fitter, so he's got a trade. So I was much the same as a young fellow. We grew up on the farm, electrified the farm's four-wheeler, and then fast forward in 2006, I did batteries, bushlight. That was small, remote Aboriginal communities, 140 of them in the top end of Australia. And, people still talk about that project. I'm going to a conference now, it'll be brought up. And then after that, the Fortescue truck. So, it's doing Fortescue solar farm, actually, and then got dragged into the world's first hydrogen electric truck, which was 240 ton. And, I'm the inventor for that machine. And then not believing in hydrogen, I went and started my own company, and that's where EPCA was born, and where we have a 100-ton truck built now with 3 patents on it, and now we last week got a signed contract for a loader. So it's just you start in something and you love it and you're passionate about it, and then you just sort of things come in and you just keep building and building on it, and then who would have known where you'd get to when you were a young fella? You just don't know, do you?
You've got an amazing story, Clayton, and I do just want to, you had me in tears of laughter on the stage at Tech23 last year. I'm keen to know, since we last spoke, what has happened. I think it's been about 6 or 7 months since Tech23. I know you've been traveling a lot. I know you've got new partnerships and things. Give us a sense of the momentum that you're building around the business. And also, are you still the teeny tiny team of 6 or 7? Is that right? Are you a bit
Yeah,
big?
I haven't increased my team size, but we actually punch out a lot more work. Believe it or not, we're using a lot of AI now. So we do a lot of stuff with AI. Something that would take me 2 weeks now, I can do it in about 6 hours. So we're finding more innovative ways. I'm very keen to keep my team size the same because I can just get things done very quickly. The main things that have changed since we last spoke, I spent a lot of time overseas. So India, Australia's got 5,500 trucks. They've got about 1,200 in the 100-ton class. But when you go to India, they've got just shy of 5,000. In fact, one company called Bemel's got 3,500 of them parked up, not being used because of mechanical issues. Ideal for a retrofit. So we spent a lot of time in India, and we have a lot of partners in India now. We moved through and spoke to a lot of them, and they're big companies. The one that we've settled on is 10 million US. Started in 1963, I think. These have been around a long time. They know their game. They're a good partner for us. That's happened. We've probably shied away a bit from VCs. Last time I was sort of thinking, I need a VC. I don't need a VC. I need an order. So I went and got an order. And then we just borrow money from a conventional bank, and we run, much the same as anyone else's business. It's plain, it's simple. You don't have to worry about equity and how much your business is worth and all that shit.
And and I think that's a really good reflection on there is not one way to build a deep tech company now. There are so many different ways. And let's be real, having customers is the best kind of funding you can absolutely have. And I love that you're doing that. I also think it's incredible that a market like India is looking to Australia for innovation. So that's incredible. What other markets are on the horizon for EPCA besides Australia and India?
Indonesia's another market, so there's a lot of machines there as well. So yeah, we're going to develop our kit and get it overseas. We're keen to do that, but we really need to test it more in Western Australia. So the current contract that we've signed sees us doing a machine that's just 2 hours away, which is good for us, 2 hours from our workshop. And then later in the year, we've got a large gold miner bringing a machine down to us, and they're about 6 hours away. So I like both of those projects, and I can get my loader going. So I've got a truck, I can get a loader going, which is the next one to do, and then also I can push through to the 240-ton. The 240-ton project's interesting to us because it puts us up with Caterpillar. So Caterpillar, they're a $66 billion company. And they have done that same size truck, and we're about to do the same size with just 4 people. We're supported by a workshop and all that. But, it just shows how much you can get done, shows how hard you can push. That'll be the 3rd machine in the world to be electrified that size and the only static charge. So it's a very unique machine, and it'll be done here in Western Australia. Perfect.
It's amazing. It's such a credible, I think I called it a David and Goliath story. I still think it is. My final question for you for now is, what's the point? What's the inflection point when the industry realizes that what you're doing isn't an experiment, but it's just best practice? What do we need to do? What needs to happen?
That will be just when you get, say for this loader, you put it on site, and probably the truck as well, get that up on the lithium mine, and then they'll be running it, they'll collect the data, they'll write a report, we'll probably get a third party in to write the report. So when that all happens, miners are like little minions, right? They just, oh shit, did you see that? That just happened over at that mine site. Oh, we better do that as well, better go and tell the boss. Hey, we were talking to that guy, but I didn't realise it, but he's on the mine, and they say that this is happening and that's happening, and there's a cost saving, and we're saving lots of money. We don't have to worry about diesel, and the machine's got more capacity and it moves more dirt. That's when you'll get that inflection, and it'll just you get the hockey stick, and then you'll just get flooded with the same people you're talking to, but they'll have this real urgency about them because they don't want to miss out.
Yeah. First,
probably.
first followers is a term I've been hearing a lot recently. Like you need those, the first follower. They're not quite brave enough to be the first buyer, but they'll definitely be the first follower. Clayton, I'm going to say goodbye to you for now, but I will see you very shortly. It's always an absolute joy to catch up with you. Love catching up and hearing how that teeny tiny team. And I just want to say, go on the website and have a look at the amazing videos that Clayton's team. I'm going to shout Francois out because he's amazing. Their videos, you can see the size of these trucks. It's pretty phenomenal. So go onto their website, have a look. Clayton, I'll see you very shortly. Thank you for the little catch up. We're going to switch gears here for a minute and we're going to go from mining trucks to another part of the energy transition, copper. I was going to say copper is essential for energy transition, but I've kind of learned that it's essential for almost everything. It's in our phones. It's going to be part of the AI. We're not going to meet the AI revolution unless we have some of these critical minerals. But copper refining is energy intensive and it's actually quite difficult to do cleanly. And that's where Banksia comes in. So to tell us lots more about it, I'd like to welcome CEO Lee Staines, who's joining us from Queensland today.
Good morning. Good morning.
I think we just need your camera on, Lee, and then I can hear you. I can't see you.
I'm getting comfy on the couch because I didn't get to sit down last time, right? So
yeah, you had to stand up on the stage.
I had to stand up the whole time. So this time I've got the sofa.
So for those who are maybe they've not heard of Banksia Minerals before, tell us what you do. What's the problem you're solving? What is the problem in copper mining, copper refining actually in the first place? You can remind me as well. And what's unique about Banksia Minerals' approach?
So we like to summarize it as redefining the future of copper production. And really underpinning that is, as you've mentioned, there's a huge surge in copper demand, which is around a lot of our lifestyle expectations. And copper supply is at that inflection point, or we've now passed the inflection point of where supply and demand are on parity, and we really need a lot more copper to be able to continue this trajectory. There isn't actually a shortage of copper resources. There's lots of known copper resources. What there is a restriction on is copper reserves that are suitable to send through conventional processing, and conventional processing is mostly smelting. And so what we've been talking about as our primary value proposition is the ability to unlock resources that would otherwise not be able to be produced. And that's because of impurities such as high arsenic and also high iron are two of the most common reasons for that. But interestingly, as we've continued, interacting with the market and testing our value proposition, there's two other areas which we were aware of, but certainly have had probably more pull than we expected early on. And in particular, that is the actual replacement of smelting. So there's a huge capacity for smelting, particularly in China. And so, in fact, that's led to an interesting market dynamic with people trying to access concentrate. But in other areas, like we've seen locally here in Queensland, we've got smelters being closed down. And so we've actually ended up really focusing, particularly with our first pilot, around being a smelter replacement technology and proving the technology with existing supply chains, then moving into opening up new supply chains. And the third one where we've had a lot of inbound interest is around industrial waste, e-waste recycling, which we absolutely can apply the technology to. But we'll come to talking a bit more around research commercialization. Probably not the most economic way to get a new technology off the ground because it's very bespoke in those projects. So that's probably later down the track for us.
I'm reflecting on this idea of where pull comes from, right? And this is the classic deep tech thing. You start with the technology and you think it's for this solution, and then you start talking to people, and sometimes that market pull comes from something completely different. And I think that's something for all the founders on the call, listening to those signals of pull where they are. Sometimes they're not what you expect, and I'm sure that's exactly what it sounds like you're going through that right now. And it's sort of, how do you maybe a question for you, Lee, is how do you work out whether it's real? And because the biggest thing for a founder is probably just so much opportunity, so many things you can follow. How have you thought about pull and opportunity?
Yeah, so I think this is where myself coming in from industry to lead a startup opportunity like this, was very much around being aware of the need for this solution from an industry setting and having the confidence that that was something that was there. And so it's almost more the nuances of how it's applied that we've then, right from day one, really invested time in going out and targeting those conversations and listening to those conversations. And I think our primary value proposition still remains the most economically exciting in the long term.
Yeah.
But as one of my team members has said, I think it sums it up really well. It's one thing to develop a new technology for an existing supply chain. It's another thing to develop a new technology for a new supply chain, because you need both to actually get off the ground. And I think that sums it up well as to where applying this to existing so-called good quality concentrates, which can go to a smelter, is obviously something that's immediately available, as opposed to some of these more challenging concentrates, which opens up a whole new resource, a new opportunity for mining. But you need to build those mines, you need to build those concentrators and actually access the supply.
It's that classic kind of first horizon, second market horizon thing. Yeah, no, it's great to see that you're thinking about that. Now, a bit about Banksia's origin story. You're actually founded from research that was done at the University of Queensland. And that research, you managed to turn that research into a company. I'm keen to know, obviously you've touched on you're from industry. Your co-founder, James, is from academia and research. What was that process like of turning the research and spinning it out of an institution? And what were some of the lessons that you learned through that journey?
Yeah, so this is a topic I'm really passionate about, and actually starting to do some conference presentations on this topic, because what we're trying to demonstrate is there's, as you just said in the previous discussion, there's lots of different ways to bring deep tech to market. Trying to get university research out of universities and into industry application is notoriously difficult. And so we're really trying to build a playbook that others can learn from and start to set a few precedents that others can build off. So I think, whilst there's a range of things, I really boil it down to 3 key points that I wanted to share today. The first one is there has to be an execution team to take this forward. It's great that the researchers inside the institution have the particular breakthrough and understand the core technology. In many situations, particularly in Australia and certainly at UQ, there's a conflict of interest policy, which means they're not allowed to actually commercialise their own technology, their own IP.
Yeah.
And so it relies on an external party to come in and do a deal to take that forward. So in the case of the research team, and in particular, Professor James Vaughan, who is the original inventor of the technology, which I treat him like a co-founder, but he's not actually, I've went on the record, he's not actually a owner of Banksia because he's not allowed to. He will get rewarded through the splits process that UniQuest uses with UQ's ownership. But that's the first bit. You need an execution team that has the skills and the passion to take it forward. And that's not necessarily as easy as it first sounds, because the people to take that forward have to be as passionate as a founder who's created the item without being the person that actually created it. Yeah. The second thing is, clearly in deep tech, as we heard over and over again at Tech23 last year, what was the common denominator? We all have capital intensive projects, and that doesn't necessarily mean VC, as we've just talked about with Clayton, but they certainly need funding. Another place where often university research being commercialised falls down for physical tech, like what we're developing, is that the university wants to hold on to such a large portion of the business, it's not investable from future capital raising perspectives. And so we've been able to negotiate terms which have allowed us to have an investable business going forward. And we'll be looking at a capital raise in the middle of this year towards our pilot plant. And the last bit is what we've touched on around genuine market pools. So for me, taking this forward and setting up Banksia, as I mentioned, I was aware there was a need for this solution before I even engaged, and then we've continued to refine that. But absolutely crucial that there is an existing pool, and it's not something that you're trying to sell, because there's so much to do when you're developing a TRL 3 or 4 technology. Yeah. You don't want to also be trying to do an entire marketing campaign to sell that solution at the same time.
Amazing. Super practical advice. Thank you, Lee. You're always so good on this stuff, and I knew you'd be able to answer that question so well. And look, there will be founders and people on the call that are maybe working on research within an institution. There is sometimes a prevailing narrative that it is hard to do, but I think if you follow those steps at least talking about and get really clear, it is possible, and look at what Banksy are doing. And speaking of what you're doing, you've recently secured funding from Arena. I've just read about you in ABC News today, a pretty incredible profile piece, and I encourage everybody to go and look on the ABC website. But what was really interesting about the Arena funding was just that you're quite early in terms of a project. This is quite early. Arena usually invest in slightly later stage projects, and I'm keen to understand, what did you need to prove to unlock that support from them? And what are you going to be using the funding for?
Yeah, I think I'm still pinching myself a little bit too about this one because it's pretty exciting. So the Arena funding opportunity came around, with them approaching us, actually, believe it or not, just through our website, reached out for more information. And I wasn't aware at the time that they had opened up a new pool of the funding around energy critical minerals. So Arena, of course, originally was more focused on renewable energy projects and supporting the capitalisation of those. But they came to us and said, would you be interested in support? Because copper obviously falls into that category. And Banksia offers a way both to decarbonise copper production as well as increase copper supply and local supply. What that led to, and I think this is key to the story, is that we've only got so much runway. Our funding at the moment is based off just two investors, which is myself and IP Group, who've been a fantastic partner. They specialise in early stage research commercialisation. So my first honest query was, how long is this going to take? Because I don't know that I've got the runway to go through doing an Arena grant. And also, what's the likelihood of success? And there was a few things that when we had an initial look at the expression of interest and the approvals, there was a couple of things that I just right up front said, look, we're so early stage that we're not going to necessarily have this to a point you would be used to. And probably the best example of that is financial model. Because at this stage, we can talk about specific value positions and case studies, but to write a finance model for a 10-year plan for the business is really just, making things up.
Yeah.
So I was able to get some agreement around, some of those points to make them more specific to what we were doing. And the last thing was really helpful, as we had a new Arena lead for our piece who just joined from VC, and he really understood the pace and the type of work that a startup has. And he was very willing to work with me on what was reasonable. The other thing that helped is once we got through the initial approval piece, there's then a whole contracting piece. And I'd actually met the CEO and the chair and a couple of the other board directors at the Arena Showcase in November. And we all spoke around the need to bring that time frame down. So we were able to work together on really trying to push that. And we managed to get the contracting time down from an average of 160 days to 70 days.
Wow.
And that included the Christmas New Year period. So everyone, including the board of Arena, were very pleased with that result. So hopefully that's going to help a few people in the future as well. But the big piece for this is the funding is up to $5 million towards our pilot project. We will go into a capital raise to support that because the pilot's more likely to be in the order of 15 to 20 million once you include running the business for 3 years. Obviously we have to construct and build it and then operate it for a year as well. But that is a significant portion of the funding, which will really help from a non-dilutive perspective going into our raise. But most importantly, gives us a tick of credibility that will really help with our investor interest.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sort of stepping us through that process. Lots of learnings for other founders. And I think just being upfront about your timelines, especially when you're talking to government or bigger end of town, it's as much time is your most precious asset that you have when you're as founders. So, being honest about how much time you actually have, and what if it's going to take forever, then maybe it's not worth it for us. I think that's such a great example. I've got one final question before you leave the sofa for now. One thing that stood out to me from the minute I met you was you're really active at being a public key opinion leader, I would say, like a KOL. You're constantly speaking at events, you're engaging in conversations in your industry. And for a lot of founders, that is not a natural place to be. But I think it's really important. And I'm keen to understand for you, why do you think it's important that deep tech founders step in and really start to try and own and be a voice within their sector? What's it unlocking for you?
Yeah, so I do think that this is key, and I appreciate, some people are more comfortable with doing that role than others. In my case, I've done this sort of role in my previous executive roles in industry, so it's certainly something that I'm more comfortable, and I've had quite a bit of formal training in media, etc. But it's crucial, because when we're talking about change management, as we are with all of these different deep tech options, building credibility is number one. It's already such an uphill battle in getting people to look at anything outside the status quo. So being able to take this and actually say, look, here's a voice that is able to talk with credibility to the existing operation, but also look forward and paint a vision for going forward. And here is how what we're doing as this particular, startup, scale up venture fits into the bigger picture. I think it just really starts to build that narrative and bring it to life for people, that they can go, oh, okay, I can actually see how this is real. And of course, then building off, starting to get things like ABC News coverage, that just gives even more validation and credibility building that this becomes mainstream media. So for me, that is absolutely an active part of the strategy. Again, right from the start, as we talked about last year, it was very important to me that our story was, here's Professor James Vaughan, very well-established researcher in the hydrometallurgy space. And here's Leith Daines, who's well known in the resources sector industry, and has a voice that has some position of authority as well. And I think the combination of those two has been really powerful for us.
It absolutely is. It's such a powerful combo. You're such a force. I'm going to say goodbye to you for now, but I will see you very shortly. Finally, we are going to move into healthcare. Continuous monitoring of medicines in the body has long been a challenge in healthcare and a massive opportunity. Today, most therapeutic drug monitoring relies on periodic blood tests, giving clinicians only a snapshot rather than real-time insights. Nutromics and Hitesh, who's just joined us, co-founder and COO, are developing what I'm calling, and I think they call it lab on a patch. We're going to learn a little bit more about what that does. Hitesh, great to see you.
Lovely to see you again, Tia. Thanks for having me.
You are joining us from Melbourne, from Victoria today. So we've got a nice national flavour of the deep tech ecosystem. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Similar question as how we kicked off with Lee and Clayton. What does Nutromics do? What exactly is the lab on a patch? What are you changing? What's it unlocking in the healthcare system?
Yeah, well, the beauty with our product compared to Leighton's massive trucks is that it fits in the palm of my hand, so I can easily show that to you and to the audience as well. So here is one of our prototypes that's in the research trials that we're running right now. And it is literally a wearable lab on a patch, as you described it, which allows us to do continuous monitoring. So the reality is that we have a sick care system, not a true healthcare system. And continuous glucose monitoring has created enormous value in terms of diabetes management, especially for type 1 diabetics. But over 60 years in the field, people have been trying to move continuous monitoring beyond glucose. And that's what we're trying to do right now and building and bringing to the market. So our technology basically will help to meet some of healthcare's largest unmet needs, which still rely on intermittent blood draws and delayed lab diagnostics for clinical decision-making. Instead, in the future, they'll be able to get that real-time continuous monitoring data using our platform, which uses DNA-based sensors for collecting that data, not just on drugs as well, but also on biomarkers, hormones, proteins as well.
So Hitesh, could you talk us through, is there an illness, something that you can talk us through, a bit of an example so we can see how it might work for a patient?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our first product and second product are actually focused around the management and treatment of sepsis and infections like sepsis and bacterial infections and MRSA infections. So our first product is for a drug called vancomycin. It's an IV antibiotic, one of the most commonly dosed IV antibiotics in the world, very narrow therapeutic window. So if you are too high, you're ending up with acute kidney injury and damage to the kidneys and complications. If you're too low, you're not treating the disease. So we're measuring that once every 5 minutes over a 24-hour period and providing that data to the clinicians before the next dosing decision. In comparison, they get one blood draw today, and they don't have that data for the clinical decision making. Our second product then expands on that for sepsis management.
Yeah, it's such what you're unlocking for both the patient, but for the clinician as well to be able to make much more informed decisions. It's such a cool product, and it's an amazing piece of research that it's built on. And speaking of the research, you actually had some of the Nutromics research published in Nature earlier this year, which is the biggest science publication in the world. And like, I just want to say, number one, congratulations to you and the entire team for such a huge achievement. From a deep tech, biotech, health tech company's perspective, what does having this kind of scientific validation, like on a global scale, what is it actually unlocking for you?
Yeah, so Nature Family is not just a scientific publication for academic purposes. It also helps us to demonstrate this is a huge commercial proof point and a huge breakthrough, and that's recognized by this publication, right? So a lot of founders sometimes underestimate this. Our job isn't just as deep tech founders to build this amazing technology and bring it to the market. We also have a accountability responsibility to actually help translate that to make the audience understand exactly what we're building, why it matters, and communicate that. That's really important for our customers, for the general public, and for investors as well. So the Nature paper helps us to do that. It's basically one of the highest bars in the scientific community. It's independent validation. It shows that we're a world first technology that's actually achieved this. And that also has been independently peer reviewed
Yeah.
by these experts as well. So that helps us a lot with the doctors, with the clinical conversations, hospital conversations. It helps us with the regulatory conversations. It helps us with fundraising and investor conversations as well. So it's a huge validation of the work the team's done. And I would just want to add one last thing. What I'm really proud of is that the paper actually is on data that we collected about 18 months ago. We've
Yeah.
moved in leaps and bounds since then, and we have more publications that will help demonstrate that.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it's such, like I said, I think it's such an incredible milestone. And you were talking, I think when we caught up the other week, like just that's now opening doors for you, right? That is, you are getting meetings and things that is just such a door opener for you. And again, I think much like what Lee and Clayton have touched on as well, like building credibility and in not just the science and the technology, but in the commercial credibility of the business as well is so
Hmm.
important. Yeah, it's really cool. So talk to me a little bit around since Tech23, if I remember correctly, I think you announced a round, I'm going to call it a small round in I think it was about $7 million back in September time. But what's
Mhm.
happened since then? What's keeping you and the team busy? What's going on in the world of Nutromics right now?
Yeah, so I think as Leah mentioned as well, startups move at a very fast pace. So it's incredible actually to think that that was just in September when we last spoke and
Yeah.
we're at Tech 23. Because since then we've completed some of the intended use studies that we were working on. So we've collected ICU data, we've shown how incredibly the tech is working and the stage it's at in terms of the patient populations. We've had regulatory conversations with the FDA. So we now know what our pathway is to launch. We're basically ready to transfer this to manufacturing, complete product development, and get FDA approval next year. The
Wow.
cumulative effect of all of this is actually we've been able to bring our launch window and the timelines in by about 9 months from what we were originally planning.
Wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. And a little birdie tells me that the team is busy. I think Peter's busy working towards the Series B raise as well. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. So
Yeah.
all of those milestones being achieved means they're now ready to open the next round.
Yeah.
We are constantly fundraising. It just the intensity goes up and down
Yeah.
in deep tech. So we've opened up a Series B right now.
Right.
And also just last week, we received another non-dilutive grant from the Federal Department of Industry and Innovation for under the CRCP program. So that will help us to supercharge work on our second product as well.
Oh, that is phenomenal traction. And for those of you who might be thinking, gosh, Nutromics seems like quite an advanced business, that's kind of the point of Tech23 is we really want to show the breadth and diversity of deep tech. It's not all just early stage. There are, I think Nutromics and what they're doing is such an incredible business. And so we just want to support whether you're early stage, whether you're more established, we want you all to be part of it. But Hitesh is probably one thing that I remember when we first spoke, this would have been when we were prepping for Tech23, and there was something about the Nutromics story. I'm going to call it so stubbornly Australian in a way. You and the team's conviction that this technology can actually not just be developed and designed, but could actually be manufactured here in Australia. And that really does run against the prevailing narrative that we hear. We sort of hear we're good at ideas, we're good at research, we can do a pilot and an MVP, but you can't really do manufacturing here. But you think you can. And I'm keen to understand why and what you're hoping to achieve in the next few months. And it sounds like this grant's going to help with it and all this momentum. So why can you manufacture what you're doing in Australia?
Yeah, because ultimately, I think Australia can be highly competitive. We're so much better than just digging minerals out of the ground and exporting them. And right now, we seem to export a lot of ideas, but there's no reason why we couldn't actually develop those ideas here, keep that Australian IP and innovation in the country. Deep tech is so much under the radar, right? And to your point, there's companies like Synchron and others who have gone overseas primarily because of the lack of infrastructure, lack of funding when you get to the scale up stage and looking to launch. So that's kind of what we're working on. The Series B helps us to get all the way to commercialization and launching the first product. And we are working actively here with potential partners who help us with the manufacturing front too. I can't talk too much about that yet because we're not ready, but we are looking at our options where we can actually help to support the first manufacturing plant from Australia and keep it here. And a lot of that is really exciting for us. There's no reason why we couldn't be competitive from here, why we can't sell this amazing technology and launch it to the rest of the world from Australia. It just needs a little push.
And I just think as well about what you would create for the broader ecosystem. You'd be creating the blueprint for the other for medtech manufacturing and things. And I know you've always taken a real ecosystem approach, the sort of, rising tides lifts all boats type thing. I think that's just such an amazing outlook. And that, like I said, I've always loved this "you can do it in Australia" mentality that the Nutromics team has. Hitesh, thank you so much. You're going to stay on with me. I'm going to now ask Lee and Clayton to come and join me back online if you can. And we're going to have a quick founder rapid fire deep tech founder questions. So I think we'll start this one with Lee. What's one piece of advice that founders get all the time that you think is actually wrong for deep tech?
I have to say the one that I really don't agree with is that you have to go and talk, the myth that you have to go and talk to hundreds of investors to be able to raise funds for your business. I really think this is a target market type of question. And if you're clear around the solution and clear around who that is going to be a genuine value proposition for, and clear around the type of investors that are interested in working with you, you can really streamline that down. So in particular, we've had a lot of inbound interest. And first question is, you realize this is a physical tech development, high capital intensity. If that's not for you, no need to continue. So there's quite a few well-known VCs we won't engage with because we know that they focus on software, for example. So I think know your market, know your audience, and make your own workload a little more streamlined.
That's a great idea. Hitesh, Clayton, any other myth busting we want to do around being a founder of a deep tech business?
I think just adding to what Lee said, it's absolutely true. Like it is a long-term game and very patient investment, but the payoffs are huge, right? There's huge competitive advantages, huge barriers that you create for anyone else trying to follow as well. So finding the right investors who align with what your vision is and what you're aiming for and understand those sort of timelines is really, really important. The other thing I'd add to that is you're not just constrained to talking to VCs in Australia, right? It's a global market for capital. The money is out there. It's just a case of finding the right investors.
Yeah, that's great advice. Clayton?
Oh, look, all I'd add is, you don't even need the VCs or an investor. Why don't you just go and find the right business partner? Find a business that complements what you're doing, right? So we do EV powertrains, but Ronnie Clark, EMJC, he does, he's got 150 machines. So he just is always fixing those machines up in a workshop that probably costs $15-20 million to buy, to fit out, Find someone that's aligned with what you're doing and join up with them.
Yeah. No, great advice from all of you. Next question, I might start with Hitesh on this one. Has there ever been a point where you've nearly stopped what you're doing in Nutromics? Did you ever hit a kind of wall where it was like, we can't do this? And I'm keen to know, what was it, if there was one, and what kept you going? I mean, obviously you and Peter are co-founder team, but like, has there been a point of like, oh my God, this is just so hard, I think we're going to stop? And why didn't you stop?
Yeah, I think one of our superpowers has been finding a way through the wall or around the wall. And I think
Yeah.
that's important. It's you have to have the passion and the resilience and the determination to get through, right? No matter what. So that's absolutely critical. That's what keeps you going, as Lee was saying as well, in those tough times as well. The other we found is just how do you actually think creatively and laterally? So a good example is when we were actually working on securing this technology that we're now commercializing. So this initial idea was invented in the US. We went out there, we didn't have any connections. We got introduced from one of our advisors to the inventor of the tech. We flew out there, said that's very interesting, and let's continue the conversation. And we flew back, and we could have given up at that point. You've flown 36 hours, literally plane, train, automobile sort of story. And then you walked back empty-handed, but we didn't give up. We persisted like a dog with a bone and went out there again. And then we met with some of their partners and we managed to secure a deal. And that was a week before COVID hit and the border shut down.
Wow.
And we found ways to then keep that research going and then translate that and transfer that to Australia. So sometimes you have to be willing to listen to know a lot. But the other really important piece in addition to that is how do you reframe the problem and think about it laterally on if you can't go through the problem, how do you go around the problem?
Yeah, I love that. Lee, Clayton, anything you want to add on? We've nearly stopped.
It's probably a good follow-on one is the point for us was definitely getting the investable terms to be able to access the IP to actually launch Banksia and start the operation. And in that reframing sense, we really had to help work with the university to reframe it from doing a deal, which they're used to doing traditional deals around licensing pharmaceutical opportunities, to a IP acquisition that was really around reputation for the university and the opportunities. So fortunately, we were able to get there, but there was certainly a point where it really came down to maybe this is just going to stop before it even begins. Unfortunately, we got past that point because what drove us to continue is just the opportunity is so real and these sorts of solutions are absolutely needed.
Clayton, what about you? What's nearly
All I was
now?
going to say is sometimes when you feel that when someone says no to you, just have a think. Maybe you need to pivot. I started trying to sell machines, right? And no one's going to buy a machine because I'm not an OEM, I'm an unknown brand. So then you say, well, I'll just retrofit. And then someone says, hey, I'd like to own the machine. You just lease me the powertrain. You take care of all the maintenance and all the issues, and you finance that compartment or that component. You just find a way, and you might pivot, swap, change, but you just keep going, moving forward.
That's great advice from all of you. Now, I want you to imagine we could get the Prime Minister Albo on the call right now, and you had a couple of minutes to pitch to him why deep tech matters for Australia. Maybe what would you say? What would we tell Albo? Why should they be caring about this? Lee, I know I can see you've got something to say. What's our pitch to Albo of why deep tech matters?
So I think the era of globalization, which most of us have spent our whole career in, is really at a point where it's actually starting to pivot back to regionalization. And this is something I talk about with a lot of my colleagues who are literally all around the world. And so the deep tech space gives us something to be able to focus on as to what we can do both locally in Australia, but regionally within Oceania. And it's really important, I think, looking forward that we've got capabilities here and we're not necessarily reliant on some of our historic allies to provide all of that for us.
Yeah, that sovereign capability piece. Great. Hitesh, Clayton, what we're telling Albo?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're really good at digging out the raw materials and shipping them overseas. But in terms of economic complexity, we rank really, really low. Like our manufacturing capability as a percentage of GDP is super low in the OECD rankings. And that's really core right now. You've seen how AI is also disrupting software space as well. Deep tech is not the silver bullet, but it's a huge area of innovation that actually ties that sovereign capability innovation to also manufacturability and sustainability in the local ecosystem and the local GDP. Biosensors, quantum computing, synthetic biology, these are at the forefront of what the future is going to be for the next century.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100% agreed. So much of what came out in the Ambitious Australia report yesterday around the R&D tax. I mean, this is the future of the economy being built by deep tech companies. Clayton, what do you want to tell the Prime Minister?
Look, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, we export our raw material, but we really should be manufacturing products back here in Australia. And there's no reason why we can't manufacture cars. Wasn't that long ago we did. Everyone says, oh, it's high labour costs. Well, there's ways to do things without high labour costs. You can have production lines and robots, and we're pretty smart on the computer fronts. I reckon we could manufacture competitively. You don't have to move the product anywhere. You've got some domestic market, and you've got Asia. I mean, Western Australia does. We're right on the doorstep, just across the Indian Ocean. There's bloody India, mate. That's the next boom population spot there, right there.
Yeah, amazing. And final question for you all before, Clayton, I know you got to go and catch a flight, busy founders and everything. Shameless plug here. But what did you value most about the Tech23 experience, and why should founders on the call put in an application? Clayton, we'll start with you.
Yeah, look, I'm West Coast, so it's hard for me to bloody find my way over there. But I did all that, and what I found was, I've had a conversation there straight after the presentation, and he did more than just hook me up with Arena and get me back in the game there. He actually started to organise some of my loans. So he just listened. The thing about it is, you don't know who's in the audience. You don't know who you may talk to. You talk to someone, and then they're actually the boss of someone, and you're dealing with someone else. Everyone is small. It's interconnected. And you tell your story, and that's where you got to go. You just got to keep telling your story, and this is a part of it, and it gets it out there, and opens more and more doors. Yeah, I love it. I would definitely recommend, even if you're coming all the way from the West. And if you're on the East Coast, bloody hell, why wouldn't you?
I've got my quote. Thank you. Lee, Hitesh, tell us why people should apply and what was the value for you.
Lee, did you want to go first?
No, sure. I think the breadth of the audience was definitely key. For us, it was a really great awareness piece because Tech23 is not sector specific. So we've had already quite a bit of engagement with industry and investors, but very much related to people looking at our space. Tech23 gave us an opportunity to bring Banksia to a much broader audience, both investor-wise, but also just general public and broader media. So I think that was really beneficial to start to get the story out there. And like Clayton said, you never know what collisions will happen out of that.
Yeah,
thanks.
I echo all of the above as well, said by Clayton and Lee. It was a great opportunity for us to have that sort of presence and get more understanding in the general public, the conversations that happen after with potential investors, also potential partners. It takes a village. We also got some really strong media coverage right after the event as well, thanks to Channel 7, who was there. And that also helped a lot of people understand what we're doing with these trials and looking at in terms of manufacturability. So I think it's really good. Deep tech is too far under the radar, and it needs a lot more visibility.
Yeah. Amazing. I'll pay you all later. Thank you for that shameless plug. It's a pleasure to see you all. Clayton, go and catch that flight. Hitesh, Lee, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Incredible stories, and thank you so much for joining us today. You're all absolutely phenomenal. I'm so proud that we get to call you our alumni. And for those of you still watching, if you're a research team, a founder just starting out, or an established business, if you're developing something in robotics, biotech, quantum, AI, material science, if you are solving problems in food security, healthcare, renewables, you name it, if it's hard and it feels like deep tech, we want to hear from you. Tech23 is the stage to spotlight what you do. It's to connect with the people that want to genuinely support you. So please put in an application. You've got until the end of April, so with plenty of time, but get in early. We would love to hear from you. And for anybody else that's watching who's part of what we like to call the Deep Tech Village, the main event will happen on the 9th of September in Sydney. Head to the website. You can find all about it. Sneaky alert. We just put tickets on sale today, right now. First person to buy a ticket will get a prize. But thank you all. I want to also say finally a massive thank you to our sponsors, our flagship sponsor, Main Sequence Ventures, and our ecosystem sponsors, City of Sydney, CFO Plus, CSIRO, Radium Capital, and UTS. Also, if you'd like to learn anything about that, get in touch with the team. Thank you all. We love this deep tech community. Amazing to see so many founders on the call today and so many parts of the deep tech ecosystem. Have a lovely rest of the day. And thanks again to our 3 incredible deep tech ventures. Bye.